Police have confirmed an FBI raid at a massage business.
Police busted massage parlor in downtown Franklin.
West Alabama Human Trafficking Task Force carried out search warrants at 3 massage parlors.
246 people were taken into custody within the same week. More than 60 women were rescued from Chinese massage parlors suspected of being fronts for a human trafficking and money laundering network worth an estimated $2.4 billion US. According to federal reports, the operation spanned across 10 states, dozens of shell companies, and a remote coordination group. In Baton Rouge, police detained 10 women during cross-check inspections of 9 facilities. In Denver, 4 parlors were searched on suspicion of laundering money. And in Queens, 7 locations were sealed in one single night, all following the same pattern: spa signs, purple lights, locked doors, and workers who rarely left the premises. These details, investigators said, matched the pattern of labor exploitation that the FBI had been tracking for 18 months. That night, task forces from the FBI, ICE, and Homeland Security moved in simultaneously. Teams entered one zone after another, documenting everything, seizing records and separating victims from their handlers. At the same time, medical and legal support units for victims were stationed right at the scene. The mission was not just to arrest suspects, but to free those forced to work in the shadows. When the first server was seized, the data revealed a web of 73 hidden businesses, moving funds across multiple countries and encrypted digital wallets. This so-called spa network was not only trafficking people, but also operating as a sophisticated laundering mechanism. Over the next 25 minutes, we will follow Task Force Number 1 as they trace the anonymous operator, the person running the entire system with just a few lines of code, and learn why even one small mistake could bring the whole operation down. Before any door was opened, the team recited the same command: protect the victims, protect the evidence, and keep everyone safe. These were the 3 mandatory rules repeated throughout their training. Every unit knew that one wrong move could endanger a victim, invalidate evidence, and collapse the mission. The warrant had been approved after more than a year of data collection. Before the raid, investigators had not only the exact locations, but also detailed blueprints, showing every camera, emergency exit, and shift schedule. Everything was prepared so that when they entered, no one inside would be caught off guard, especially those being held to work. Each unit had a defined role. Team Number 1 secured the scene. Team Number 2 handled victim support, including social workers, interpreters, and doctors. Team Number 3 was responsible for collecting evidence, recording, tagging, sealing, and transferring it to storage. No word-of-mouth records, only written documentation. Every member was trained under a trauma-informed protocol, meaning they acted in ways that would not re-trigger victims' fear. Voices stayed calm, movements slow, and interpreters of the same gender accompanied each person. When a woman was escorted out, the first question was not an interrogation, it was whether she needed water or medication. Only then was her statement recorded, step by step. From a legal standpoint, the threshold was clear. Only when there was probable cause, strong enough grounds for reasonable suspicion, could a warrant be executed. That warrant allowed not only a property search, but also the immediate duplication of electronic data. Hard drives, phones, and ledgers were sealed in numbered evidence bags. The custodian of each item signed a transfer record, known as the chain of custody, proving the evidence had never been tampered with. Meanwhile, financial analysts from the Department of Homeland Security issued temporary transaction freezes to banks linked to suspicious accounts. Their goal was to stop the flow of money before the arrests became public. They did not fire weapons or destroy property. They disabled the operation by blocking funds and data. A delay of even a few minutes could have wiped entire transaction histories clean. Before deployment, each team checked their list: camera batteries, flashlights, masks, medical kits. There were no sirens, no pounding on doors. When the signal go was given, they moved along safe routes, minimizing confrontation. Every step was recorded through body cameras and uploaded to a central server immediately after completion. Only when the inside team reported secured were the support units allowed in. This was not just a raid, it was a precisely designed process, ensuring that everyone walked out alive and with their right to be heard. Every second of the plan carried that meaning. And for that reason, no one was allowed to deviate from protocol, not even by a single detail. 18 months before the raid, the investigation had begun with a small report in Denver. A tenant in a commercial building reported unusual activity in an upstairs apartment. Doors always locked, visitors arriving late at night, and constant footsteps till dawn. Local police checked, but found no direct criminal evidence. However, financial data later revealed a new lead. hundreds of thousands of dollars moving monthly through an account registered to a wellness company at that same address. Phase 1. Observation and confirmation. The FBI formed a federal analysis team. They collected business records, tracked tax filings, and used digital transaction tools to identify overlaps. The same names began to appear across several states: Texas, Louisiana, New York, and Georgia. The pattern repeated: spa fronts, dim lighting, overnight operation hours, quiet workers with no driver's licenses or resident cards. The properties were leased under different corporate names, yet shared 2 shipping addresses and 1 commercial bank account. Using that data, investigators created a temporary map. They called it the Lotus Chain, named after the first suspected spa. The connections grew thicker with time. Each dot represented a facility. Each arrow represented a money trail. At the center sat a server in the outskirts of Houston, believed to be the technical control hub. Phase 2. Federal expansion. Once evidence became strong enough, the case moved to federal level under the cooperation of ICE, HSI, and the DEA. A joint task force was established in Houston, staffed with financial, digital, and legal experts. Their goal was to prove a coordinated laundering and exploitation scheme. Team members worked in strict confidentiality, with data stored in isolated systems accessed only through physical tokens. Every action was logged. Each meeting, each call, each received data packet. For 8 months, they quietly gathered evidence: utility bills, rental contracts, banking records, and international shipping documents. Each business shared the same profile: late hours, regular clients, and point-of-sale records showing thousands of small transactions that, when combined, far exceeded what a legitimate spa could earn. Around the same time, investigators traced cryptocurrency transfers originating from the same IP address as the Houston server. The money moved to Mexico City, then looped back through a medical equipment importer in California. The pattern was flagged as illogical but consistent when early interviews with victims in Baton Rouge revealed that they had all been transported from the same transit point. The Lotus Chain was officially confirmed as a multi-state network. Phase 3. Preparing the operation. In the 17th month of the investigation, the legal team moved to obtain federal search warrants. By then, they had gathered enough evidence to define the criminal scope: labor exploitation, human trafficking, and money laundering. The warrant was signed in a closed session between representatives of the Department of Justice and the Department of Homeland Security. 12 facilities were placed on the target list. 3 sites were marked Priority Red, where the likelihood of detained victims was highest. 1 month before the action, reconnaissance teams surveyed the sites. They filmed the entire block. They counted cameras, mapped entrances and exits, and located routers. That data fed a 3-dimensional simulation. During the operation, everyone would know exactly where they stood and which routes were safe. At the same time, technical teams analyzed the site's network traffic. They legally installed traffic recorders to capture any remote control signals. Phase 4. Night of action. The G hour was set for 11:20 p.m., synchronized across the key states. The signal came from the command center in Houston. Alpha set, Bravo confirm. No sirens and no warning lights. Teams moved along pre-planned routes in complete silence. When the first team entered, they found 2 women locked in a small room with no phone and no identification. The medical team was called immediately. At the same time, the tech team seized a mini server inside a wooden cabinet. An external hard drive was still spinning. The data showed heavy transaction volume over the past 3 months, about $28 million US, according to the seized ledger. In Denver, ICE teams found sealed packets of white powder inside bottles labeled massage oil. A rapid test came back positive for fentanyl. Within the first 3 hours, 9 facilities were sealed. 19 women were brought out. 4 required emergency medical care. All victims were taken to a secure center with interpreters and doctors on site. Phase 5. After securing the sites. By 3 a.m., the entire team returned to the command center. Hard drives, phones, and computers were tagged and held in a secure vault. Technicians began data extraction and flagged suspicious transactions. Every line of code and every cryptocurrency wallet was backed up twice. When internal ledgers were matched with bank records, investigators found a chain of transfers totaling nearly $230 million across 73 different companies. That figure was marked as a preliminary estimate and had not yet been independently audited. The next morning, a brief statement was released. A federal operation dismantled a multi-state exploitation network with transactions estimated in the billions of dollars. There were no raid photos and no footage of firearms. There were only data and figures. Inside the operations center, investigators made coffee. They knew this was only the beginning. Outside, social teams continued to work with the victims. They arranged shelter, provided counseling, offered interpreters and lawyers. Those women were not numbers in a report. They were living proof that a mission could succeed without a single shot being fired. When the hard drives and mini servers were secured, the FBI digital team entered a phase called Dissecting the Control Chain, known in operations as the kill chain. The goal was to trace how the network was run from the first command to the moment money disappeared. The sealed drives contained hundreds of gigabytes of log files, access histories, and account records. Each facility used apparently normal appointment management software, but inside the source code was a hidden layer that synchronized internal information through a server abroad. Only by decoding that chain did investigators see how commands traveled, scheduling, moving staff, and most importantly, triggering automatic payments between shell entities. Analysis showed the system ran on 3 tiers: the human tier, the operational tier, and the control tier. The human tier consisted of on-site managers. They reported revenues and coordinated staff. The operational tier included importing firms, bank accounts, and payment gateways. The control tier was the overseas server where commands were sent through encrypted software that changed its IP address after each session. When the traffic was decoded, technicians found short message chains sent at fixed times, each only a few characters long. They contained no clear content. Yet when arranged on a timeline, they matched transfer times in commercial banks. That suggested each message was an action signal, replacing a direct order. Investigators later called these packets the network's heartbeat. To locate the source of the signals, they compared latency across servers to infer the origin point. The results suggested commands originated from 2 major West Coast cities before being relayed through a virtual server in Mexico City. A copy of the data was sent to Cyber Command's technical office to confirm the encryption chain. Reports show the protection layer used commercially available tools, not offensive hacking software. That distinction allowed legal teams to argue they were dealing with a business coordination system rather than a hacker infrastructure. It kept the investigation within proper legal scope. And after identifying the command sources, the FBI simulated the full path of a transaction. When a client paid at a spa, the system logged an order code. That code passed through 3 intermediary servers. Each intermediary withheld 5 to 10% of the amount before sending the remainder to a digital wallet owned by an entity in another state. At the end of the chain, a withdrawal order moved funds internationally. The total time for a transaction was about 4.2 seconds. In simulations, disrupting a single heartbeat would stop the payment network. But cutting the source had to be done lawfully. Rather than attacking systems, technicians used a legal sinkhole method. They rerouted traffic to a server controlled by the FBI so they could observe without causing disruption. In the first 72 hours, they captured over 8,000 signals. That was enough to build a virtual map of the whole system. Each server, each command, and each hidden transaction was labeled. With that map, neutralizing the network became a technical exercise. Lock domains, freeze wallets, and close payment gateways. According to technical analysts, the most notable feature was not the amount of money, but the level of automation. The network ran almost without human intervention. Commands were cyclical. Revenue reports generated automatically. Accounts adjusted themselves when anomalies appeared. The system's cold automation made the investigation difficult. There was no obvious person issuing orders in the traditional sense. There was only an algorithm. When the full structure was reconstructed, the final map revealed a command network divided into 4 clusters: transport, finance, personnel, and communication. Each cluster contained at least 2 backup servers. A hit on one node would not collapse the entire system. Only by blocking all 4 heartbeats simultaneously could the network be stopped. That discovery led investigators to the next stage, uncovering the financial shell behind it, where digital commands turned into real-world money. Once the digital orders were decoded, the investigation shifted into the physical world, where money, people, and goods moved together through a complex system designed to remain invisible. People called it a front, but at this scale, it functioned more like an ecosystem, smoother and more efficient than many legitimate corporations. The shell structure was built as a layered chain. The first layer consisted of massage parlors or beauty salons. The second layer included importing companies. The third layer was made up of wellness or consultancy groups registered as health service providers. On paper, everything was lawful. Tax codes, business addresses, and listed representatives all checked out. Yet when accountants matched the books, the revenues across layers aligned perfectly, down to the cent, a clear sign the chain existed solely to move money back and forth. investigators identified more than 70 shell corporations, most registered within the past 3 years. Each business had at least one bank account, and all shared the same accounting provider in Houston. That coincidence became the key. From the provider's digital invoices, the team discovered a pattern of weekly report submissions every Friday night, just after cryptocurrency transactions were triggered. On the logistics tier, the movement of people and goods followed a strict cycle. Employees were recruited through social media, promised light work and high pay. Upon arrival in the United States, they were housed near the work sites, with their passports held for safekeeping. Every 3 to 4 weeks, new workers replaced old ones, transported by rental vehicles across neighboring states. The travel schedules matched GPS data that the FBI had obtained, revealing an organization far beyond isolated exploitation. The goods tier was used to conceal the transportation of illicit substances. Inside crates labeled as massage oils or spa supplies, the DEA discovered double packaging, a legal outer layer and an inner layer filled with unlabeled white powder or tablets. Lab analysis found traces of fentanyl and compounds used in cocaine production. These containers followed the route Mexico, Texas, Colorado, using falsified customs declarations for medical equipment. The pattern matched what investigators had already modeled. 3 bottlenecks were identified in the network's operations. First, nighttime transport, when goods and people were moved together to avoid inspection. Second, couriers, temporary workers who frequently changed identities to evade recognition. Third, the payment gateway, an online processing hub branded under Wellness, used to collect revenue before converting it into digital currency. These bottlenecks became priority legal targets. Instead of dismantling the whole network at once, investigators began to close valves one by one, requesting truck seizure warrants, tracing rental records, and monitoring gateway transactions. When even one link was neutralized, cash flow slowed, and the entire shell structure started to surface. According to a financial agency report, the model relied on layering, the technique of separating dirty money into multiple stages to obscure its origin. A small payment from a spa would move to an import company, then to a consultancy group, and back through an online payment gateway. After 3 cycles, it appeared as a legitimate service fee. On paper, the funds looked clean, but when matched with banking timestamps, the repeated daily cycles exposed the underlying laundering. Each corporate layer mirrored the next, all revolving around a coordination group informally referred to as the Jade Serpent Syndicate. Public filings suggested that this network linked an Asian trafficking ring with South American narcotics suppliers. However, prosecutors emphasized that these allegations were still under review, and no convictions had yet been reached. Investigators described the structure as a crime automation engine. People, goods, money, and paperwork all programmed to run on schedule. Every tier had replacements ready. Every layer had a backup company waiting to activate. When one location was shut down, another already had a lease in place. This regenerative design made total eradication nearly impossible. When one arm was cut, another quickly grew back. From the seized drives and ledgers, financial analysts began to rebuild the movement of funds. There were no action scenes here, only numbers. Those numbers revealed the true scale of the network. Preliminary records showed that within just 3 months, the system processed roughly $28 million, mostly domestic transfers mixed with cash deposits. The money flow followed a principle investigators called many small streams, one destination. Each spa submitted earnings as service fees to an intermediary company. The money was pooled into a larger account, then redistributed through import and consultancy firms. By the 3rd layer, the funds appeared legitimate on paper, taxes paid, contracts signed, and banking records clean. This was the essence of layering, splitting and reclassifying money until its origin disappeared. According to financial analysis estimates, just 3 major intermediary companies had handled more than $230 million over 2 years. The figure was still under audit, but it revealed enormous profit margins, roughly 20 to 25% per cycle, amounting to tens of millions in net gains reinvested in real estate and digital assets. As the money moved, it left what analysts called a heat trail. Transaction patterns so identical they could not be random. Operational costs were also meticulously recorded. Each facility spent around $15,000 to $20,000 monthly on rent, utilities, and protection fees. That last expense, investigators said, was paid to intermediaries who ensured legal safety, effectively functioning as bribery. At the upper tier, the largest costs involved transport and currency conversion. Electronic wallet service fees alone accounted for nearly 3% of total cash flow, an unusually high figure compared with legitimate businesses. In the final phase, The funds were consolidated into digital wallets, then withdrawn as USDT, a type of stablecoin favored for its difficulty to trace. From there, the money flowed through foreign exchanges, converted into cash, and re-entered the United States disguised as new investments. The entire cycle took less than 2 weeks, creating the illusion of an endless stream of money. According to federal financial reports, the total value of transactions across the network was estimated between 1.8 and 2.4 billion US dollars, though that figure had not yet been independently verified. Regardless of the final number, one fact was clear: money was the true engine of the network, the force that sustained its people, its operations, and its facades for years. The legal framework behind this operation went far beyond routine search warrants or arrests. It involved the coordination of multiple federal statutes, each addressing a specific branch of the criminal network: trafficking, money laundering, labor exploitation, and drug transportation. To keep every action within lawful bounds, the interagency legal team relied on some of the most powerful tools in U.S. federal law. The foundation was the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, TVPA, enacted in 2000 and updated several times since. Under this law, anyone forced to work, threatened, or deceived is recognized as a victim, even if they were involved in illegal labor. This distinction allows law enforcement to separate victims from the accused and prevents their prosecution for immigration or prostitution offenses. It was one of the core principles of the investigation. For the organizers, prosecutors applied Title 18, U.S. Code, Section 1591, addressing human trafficking for commercial exploitation, along with Section 1956 on money laundering. Using both provisions allowed the government to charge not only those directly involved, but also financiers and facilitators of the crimes. Electronic data search warrants were issued under Title III, which permits lawful monitoring and data duplication when probable cause is established. Assets belonging to shell companies were frozen under civil and criminal forfeiture, enabling the seizure of property connected to criminal activity even before conviction. To protect innocent parties, financial regulators worked with FinCEN, the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, to review suspicious transactions and issue SARs, suspicious activity reports, to banks. When foreign entities were implicated, the Department of the Treasury could request OFAC sanctions if links to blacklisted individuals or organizations were found. Another crucial element was international cooperation. When funds crossed national borders, the Department of Justice submitted Mutual Legal Assistance Treaties, MLATs, to partner countries. Through this mechanism, financial data, personal records, and electronic evidence could be lawfully exchanged between governments. For nations without bilateral agreements, requests went through diplomatic channels as letters rogatory, formal appeals to foreign courts for evidence collection. While one branch of law focused on prosecution, another was dedicated entirely to victim protection. Those rescued were eligible for T visas or U visas, granting legal residence in the United States, while they cooperated with investigators. They were provided with shelter, counseling, medical care, and free legal aid. The goal was to help them regain stability and ensure their testimonies were given voluntarily, under safe and humane conditions. Every step of the legal process was built on the principle of presumption of innocence, meaning all accused individuals are considered innocent until proven guilty in court. The operation may have been a tactical success, but the final judgment rests with the judiciary. That boundary between investigation and justice is why all case files remain sealed until formal indictments are filed. Not every piece of evidence aligned perfectly, and not every suspect was convicted. Experts cautioned that in large-scale cases, there is always a risk of conflating organized exploitation with voluntary labor. Some inspected businesses might have been legitimate, merely caught in the same transaction web. That is why each case underwent independent financial audits before prosecution, ensuring that the anti-crime effort would not turn into a wave of false accusations. There were also gaps in cross-border investigations. Not all countries were willing to share banking data or verify sender identities. These blind spots made it difficult to fully close the network. Still, specialists viewed that complexity as a necessary reminder that modern crime no longer separates people, machines, and money. When the operation concluded, 73 businesses were frozen, more than 60 individuals were rescued, and dozens of suspects faced federal indictments. But inside the support centers, the women who had been held captive stood as the clearest evidence of what had truly happened. They were the reason federal agencies continued to trace hidden financial systems, rather than declaring victory too soon. This investigation proved one essential truth: dismantling a network is not enough. You must disable the mechanism that allows it to rise again. That was the lasting lesson of Operation Iron Lotus, and a warning to every nation confronting the same kind of invisible crime. Laws can set limits, but justice only exists when real people are seen and protected.